Well, good morning, everybody. I'd like to just take a moment to welcome myself back. It's been a couple weeks, and I know you were all just desperately waiting for this final into step 3 because I wasn't able to finish that off before I headed over to Europe and do all of that kind of stuff. So at the end of this video, I'm going to plug in a couple highlights from that trip because it was pretty cool. I don't know if everybody wants to, or anybody wants to look at that kind of stuff, but there'll be like a little 2-minute clip at the end of this, just so you guys know where I was and what I was up to. Anyway, so I couldn't complete the number 3 before I left because I was waiting on this. I couldn't find one locally, and if any of you guys are familiar with this, it's just a simple moisture meter. Now, these are made for potted plants, so typically if you're going to go down to Home Depot or Lowe's or Ace or anything like that, you'll find it more in the potted plant section. I just didn't have any around here locally, but it's something that I've had in my toolbox for a long time, and I don't know why I couldn't find it. I imagine it could have stayed at the old house, so I haven't actually used it here. Now, we're talking about watering, we're talking about irrigating, proper irrigation, and it is still summer. Now, I don't know if you guys where you are, but it is still very much summer here. Today highs are going to be around 85. It's been dry around 20 days now with no rain, and this lawn is watered with either a gear driven head sprinkler that goes back and forth, or just a little rotary one that covers, I can do the whole thing in about 3 moves. Okay, so while I was gone, I left instructions to just kick this hose on for about an hour twice. That was all I really wanted it to run. I was told that it did run longer one night, but I just had one sprinkler parked over by this aspen tree that just kind of covered most of the lawn. Now, it didn't hit everything, so there were some dry spots when I got home on Sunday, and I've actually already recovered those. But you can see the hill kind of suffered a little bit, and there were some little spots here behind the playground that didn't. But here's what we're going to talk about. So if you were to go back and take a look at some of my like 60-second lawn fact things, it was one I talked about watering and how much water turf needs in the summer to really stay healthy, and that tends to balance out around 1.5 inches a week. So knowing your overall flows and how everything works out, you can find out what your 1.5 inches is. You can do the tuna can, you can do all that stuff. Or you can go a different route. If you're like me, you are able to water when you see the grass start to thin out. Now, well-hydrated grass, well-hydrated turf blades are thicker, they hold up really well, and they've got really good color. You're not gonna see any stress on this. Now, look how clean that cut is, that's amazing. So as it starts to dry out and the moisture wicks away, your green grass will start to get a kind of a gray look about it, and the blades tend to thin out, and that's a good time to water. But if you're only watering a little and thinking 15 or 20 minutes is going to be okay, you're sorely mistaken, because by the time it's gotten to that point, you've got to do a lot more. So I want to show you this. I'm going to get this guy out, and I want to give you an idea of how this thing works. Cool thing is, now they set it up to have your moisture content. You just switch over, electrodes read it. Light, which is important for potted plants, that's why that's on there. You know, if your plant is in too dark or whatever, it's good to have a light meter. And then pH, so you can see where things are balanced out. Now, based on my soil test and what I know here, this should be reading like 7.5-ish. It might be a little lower right now because it got watered heavily, and water naturally has a pH of 7. So we'll see kind of how that balances out. But let's go put this in the ground, and we'll talk about that watering down deeper, and then how you could use this as a tool, just leaving it in your lawn. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, so before I start using this thing, I do want to point something out. For those of you that have been following along for a while, you know that I was dealing with gophers and all kinds of fun stuff around here. The main areas that they had destroyed are right where I'm standing. Now, in some of the videos, you could probably see where it was thinner and there were like little brown spots and things, but you can see how everything is filled in now everywhere. Yeah, nothing really to see here anymore. It's just clean all the way across. But let's get back onto this moisture meter. So, as I mentioned before, I watered heavy after I got home. I wanted to make sure that I had this thing back in shape, mowed, everything else, so that I could, you know, really get a good representation of this video. So, here we go. Now, I watered this 2 days ago, so Sunday. When I got home, I came out, I put a sprinkler on the hill because this was all dried out, and I ran it for a good hour and a half because I really wanted the water to sink down deep into the lawn. And when I say deep, I want to be 6 inches down. I want to have moisture readings that far. So I know that if I stick this into the ground right now, even though it was watered 2 days ago, if you can see, this is pinned over on wet all the way over. Let's go a little closer. See, we're going dry, just on the surface. As soon as these electrodes go in, I'm soaked. And I can keep pushing that down further and further as far as it wants to go. And see, I've got moisture all the way down deep over here. So what's cool about having this device, and it's, you know, it's like a more advanced version of the screwdriver test really, because what you're doing is you have a visual representation. So if you were to take this and put it in your lawn, set it down into the ground, all the way down low, in a place where it was visible to you, say walking by on your sidewalk or something, as you see this start to tick back and move towards dry, now it's time to water again. And so that's when you would want to kick on your sprinklers and refill this pan. You want to get everything down deep, watered up. And that doesn't happen with a 20-minute watering. You know, if you're in sand, sand is going to lose that moisture very quickly, so you're going to have to do multiples. If you're in clay, you have to do sort of longer, lighter waterings, but if it gets dry, no water's going to penetrate. You have an infiltration rate of less than 1/10 of an inch an hour. So in a rain event in Florida, that sand could take up to 2.5 or 3.5 inches, depending on the coarseness of the sand, into the soil in an hour. In Georgia, you're lucky to get 1/10 of an inch. Now, if the soil is moist and you have more carbon in the soil, it's going to get in there a little bit faster. But basically what that means is, if you let that clay dry up, you're basically watering your driveway and you're not going to get water penetration. And I have not come over here to try to freshen this up. So this is in dry condition. And again, if we have our meter, I can stick this in here and I've got some moisture here. See that? But nothing like the rest of the lawn. And just even I can tell from trying to get it in the ground that it's drier. If I go right back here, yeah, not looking so good. Just barely on the moist side. I know that this is gonna have to get watered. If I go right outside of that, same thing. So I've got this area that needs to get a little bit more of a drink, and just kind of looking at the top of it, it's kind of dusty over here. There's not a lot of moisture happening. That's dry here. That looks like it was outside of my sprinkler line. So now I know this is an area that I'm gonna have to spot water. Obviously, just looking at it, you can tell it's dry, so you would know that that would have to happen, but it's something that would take a little bit more monitoring on your part to know. Okay, so one of the things that should be really talked about and noted here is the set it and forget it mentality. Back when I was spraying lawns a lot, and I was dealing with customers that, you know, that were having trouble, dry spots, things like that. They always thought it was a fungus, they always thought it was a bug, it was always sprinklers. 9 times out of 10, the problems are sprinklers. And I'll take you through a domino effect on that in a second. But watering for 20 minutes every other day, or 3 times a week, or 2 times a week is not gonna do it when temperatures go up. Your watering cycle has to reflect temperature increases, okay? So you can be way off, like way down low in the spring when temperatures are cooler. There's no reason to really water heavy. Chances are you're getting more rain, and so you're going to have an opportunity to just let nature do a little more work, and then you can supplemental water. As temperatures come up, then you need to be coming in a bit harder and heavier for longer periods of time, not more days. Let me put it like this. If a kid, one of my kids, goes and takes a shower for 20 minutes and they sit in the water for 20 minutes, they get out and they come downstairs and I say, did you wash your hair? No. Did you use soap? No. That was a completely ineffective watering on that child. They didn't do what they needed to do. They didn't get clean. Now, that's kind of a weird way to put it, but it's the same thing. If your lawn dries out and you try to fix it with 20 minutes of watering, you're screwed. Bottom line. So as temperatures come up, it's most important to add minutes to your schedule. Add minutes to your schedule, not days. So you go in, you change your timer. Let's say it's been 70, mid 70s in the springtime. You're probably not gonna be watering, maybe 20 minutes is enough. When you go into the 80s, you're gonna need to bump that up to 30, 35 minutes. When it goes into the 90s, we're talking like 45 minutes. It's a lot more water, but it's also a short window of time. You're talking about just this midsummer peak, and then you can taper it off. When you look at the balance of taking watering at low level and then bringing it up with temps and then watering back down, you do this bell curve. In the end of the season, you end up using the same as if you'd set it for 20 minutes, but your lawn gets way more of a benefit because you're hitting it when it needs it most. It's just like in midsummer, if it's 95 degrees outside and there's a swimming pool and you're just sitting there sweating and you're staring at that swimming pool and you're not doing anything about it, I feel really sorry for you, because all you need to do is cool down. You just need to jump in there and all of a sudden the heat doesn't feel so bad. So oftentimes, depending on where you live, there's watering restrictions, there's days of the week, there's times, there's all these different things that you kind of have to take into effect. And so you need to manage your minutes. Minutes more than days. That is the most important thing I could ever tell anybody who's got an irrigation system or who's hand watering. So let's talk about that for a second. Welcome to the desert of the real. So, talking about those water droplet sizes, watch this. Now this is dry, bone dry, okay? I'm gonna take this hose here, which I have holding the water back at the moment, and let it run down this dirt. This is very ineffective watering. Water droplet size and force onto the ground. If you're walking around with a hose and you're doing it this way and just trying to flood things out, this is the effect. There isn't a water percolation that happens because there's too much of a flow over a certain area. If we thin the stream down and we go into wider droplets, we eliminate the point of runoff. Now, the smaller the droplet size, the better chance that it has to break down through the soil as more water comes in behind it. It's the same as when we talk about liquid fertility versus granular fertility, prill sizes, all of that kind of stuff. It's just important to understand that the more you can spread the fan out, the better it's ultimately going to go into the soil and give you a more effective watering. So let's run those things off again. What are we looking at here? Grass clippings. No. More minutes when it gets hot. Watering down. Picture your lawn like it's got a 6-inch pool underneath it, and you need to fill that pool every time you water. So that can be done with adding more minutes. I didn't say you do 6 inches of watering. There's just a depth that needs to remain moist and able to be read. The moisture meter works wonderfully, and if you can park it out there, and if you are somebody who just loves to be on top of the lawn often, you can say, okay, great, this thing needs water. I'm gonna go in and flood it, take it back to where it's wet again, and then let it slowly dry back out. So then you're gonna drive roots down as you let it dry every single time that you do it. So effective watering versus watering, two totally different things. And for you pros out there, having one of these meters on your truck, the screwdriver is great, okay? I love the screwdriver, that's at least something. It's a visual that you can show a customer and they take a look at it and say, okay, yes, I see that's dry. But if you've got this little meter, you can shove down into the ground and say, look, here's what's happening. Then they'll start to get it. And it might be wet on the surface. And that's what a lot of people might see, is when you actually are watering ineffectively, you have a moisture layer that's low, 1.5 to 2 inches deep. And as soon as you press down through it, you can see what's really happening. So soil probes, sure. A visual meter, even better, because that's going to be something that you can actually physically show a customer, or, you know, as a homeowner, you can see that. So that's pretty much the rundown. Effective watering versus watering, two totally different things. So we want to make sure that every time you put your sprinklers on, you are getting the water to penetrate, percolate, and get down and make the roots go down and chase it. And that's why we want to go deep water. We shove water way down, well below where your current root zone is. And so the plant will start to take everything up that's on the closest level first, plus the heat is baking down on it. So that's the area and the zone to which the most water is going to go away. If we have it wet down deeper, the roots are going to chase down, look for that, grab it, and ultimately you're going to end up having less stress. Deeper roots, less stress. So as you go through the summer, you're gonna see the need for those deep waterings actually start to decrease, but you're gonna be going heavy every single time. So while we still have some warm weather left, we are starting to get into fall and fall fertility, which I'll be covering off here very soon. You just need to make sure you manage your water. So, as Pete Denny would say, get your water right. And that's about it. I've got a ton of yard work to do, so I'm gonna get to that. And yeah, if you guys stick around after this, you'll see a little reel of the places where I just was. So I will talk to you guys all real soon. It's good to be back. See ya. That is.